Welcome to the Waiver Wire Show from Legit Football. Brian McFadden, Kevin Phillip here. We're going to be bringing you your need-to-know waiver wire priorities every week. This is a brand new show. We've been teasing it, Kevin, for a little while that we're going to be doing a little bit more fantasy content, a little bit more fantasy stuff out there for it. I know this is your realm, your element. How are you feeling on this Tuesday night?
Dude, you already know, man. I've been foaming at the mouth since I got involved with this company, trying to get my fantasy angle just squeezed in there. So I feel super blessed and lucky to get to be able to talk about fantasy football with some of the best minds in the business. So, Brian, I think we're going to be helping a lot of people win championships with this show specifically and our show tomorrow night, which I'll let you talk about.
We're going to talk about that, and we're going to do this the way that only Legit Football could, and that is short and sweet. So our Waiver Wire Show is going to be shorter even than the 30 minutes of football if you guys used to tune in there. It is going to be going back and forth. We're going to share our favorite quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, even a defensive streamer, one each, maybe throw in some honorable mentions. We'll leave a couple minutes at the end if you guys have waiver-specific questions, but that's it. You're going to come here on Tuesday nights. You're going to get what you need to know to help you win those waivers and win your league. And then as Kevin mentioned, on Wednesday nights, we're going to debut yet another show, 2 shows in 1 week, debuting the Fantasy Q&A show. But that's all it is. Every Wednesday and the 30-minute slot, so 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern. It's just Kevin and I taking your fantasy questions. That's it. AMA, bring it all. So, Kevin, without further ado, let's give the people what they want. Let's give them some waiver wire suggestions. Are you ready to go?
Dude, I am. And I do want to say one thing. The fact that we're doing this show goes to show you how important the waiver wire is to winning your championship. The saying is a tale as old as time. You don't win your league at the draft. You win your league by – it's a war of attrition, Brian. We've been in enough fantasy football leagues. I'm sure you, not unlike myself, have a lot of championships under your belt. And I've never once in any of the leagues I've won a championship been like from week one, yep, I got the best team. It
never works that way.
It's the grit.
You got to trade. You got to work that waiver wire.
Waiver wire. You're going to get starters off the waiver wire every year. And today is the day where that journey starts for us and our listeners. I'm ready.
All right.
Brian.
So like we said, we're going to keep this short and sweet. We know that you guys are used to asking us questions and we're engaging. We're going to try to just keep this with back and forth suggestions. If you have waiver specific questions, we'll answer them at the end, but we're going to try to just get you the info you need so you guys can go log onto your platforms and make your bids. Kevin, let's go ahead and start with the quarterback position. Who is your top waiver priority for quarterbacks this week?
Well, this is tough, right? Because I did see the name that you had in the doc was probably the name I would have looked at. But I'm able to go kind of scrape down at the bottom of the barrel a little bit from at least the bottom of my barrel, not your barrel, not Adrian's barrel. But quarterback Baker Mayfield of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is averaging 245 passing yards and 1.5 touchdowns a game through 2 games. In his next matchup, he's a sneaky streamer this week. He's playing Philly, who would have thought in the world that they would be hemorrhaging yards to quarterbacks, but they are. So, you know, him and Mike Evans have insane chemistry. I would say throw Baker Mayfield in there. It's definitely a great waiver wire play. If you got a starter, Jonathan brought up Burrow, somebody who's underperforming, somebody who's hurt. I think it's a glory play. It's a gut check play, but I like Baker Mayfield as my waiver wire quarterback pick this week.
Yeah, I like it as a streamer. I honestly have my own reservations about how long Baker can keep this up. He has played two very bad defenses in the Vikings and the Bears that has padded his stats a little bit. But hey, he's still getting it done. Baker Mayfield could still be a thing. I can't argue with your selection there. The one that you alluded to on my side, my quarterback of the week, Jordan Love. Obviously, this is going to be more redraft-centric because when you're in deep dynasty leagues, Jordan Love is not sitting on the bench. Right. Or sitting in the waiver wire. But let's recap what his first 2 weeks have been. Everybody, what are the Packers going to be like after Aaron Rodgers? How about 6 touchdowns, 0 interceptions? He's tied for the league lead in passing touchdowns. And he's done it without his number 1 wide receiver, Christian Watson, and did it without his number 1 running back last week in Aaron Jones. I have been watching these games closely, and at least through 2 weeks, Jordan Love looks like the real deal, Kevin.
Yeah, dude. And who would have thought that Green Bay would nail a quarterback pick? Am I right?
They've never done that before, only for the past 2 decades. All right, so recap, we've got Kevin recommending Baker Mayfield, and I am recommending Jordan Love. Jordan Love still, I used the Fantasy Pros percentages, FYI. They do consensus rankings, which I like. So they pull from all these different sites. So we're not talking about one site or another. If we get a sponsor, we'll happily relay your percentages, but for now, we're just going to stick with Fantasy Pros. Moving on to the running back position, Kevin, who do you like at running back on the waivers this week?
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like this one really starts and ends with one name, especially if you refer to redraft, especially if you refer to home leagues, right? Because this name, it's not a new name, Brian. And I wrote this in the doc. I don't know if you're aware of this, but I did a top 5 series for Legit Football this summer, and I put him in my breakouts. And now his path to the starting role, unfortunately, rest in peace to the Nick Chubb fantasy season. Hopefully not to the career of Nick Chubb. Wonderful, wonderful player. But Jerome Ford, his backup, is pretty widely available, especially in home leagues, especially in redraft leagues. People like you and I, Brian, we've known about Jerome Ford and his talent for a while because he's got one of those player profiles. He's got one of those skill sets that jumps off the page. And it's a no-brainer. I mean, after Chubb went out, he balled out. Deshaun Watson is hot garbage. So the fact that they're going to have to lean on the running game still, and the team is built to run. I think
Stefanski loves to run the ball. It's a good situation for Ford on top of the fact that he is a talented back.
And he's already gotten the vote of confidence from Stefanski in a press conference saying he is our starter. They might bring in somebody, but I wouldn't blink. I think he's going to go maybe slide into a potential high-end RB2, maybe low-end 1 if he really breaks out like we think he can. So I think Jerome Ford, I'm talking Baker, I wouldn't spend a cent of fab. I would put in a $1 or $2 bid. Jerome Ford, I might empty the clip for Jerome Ford. So
we talked about with how we're going to approach fob recommendations on this show. I was going to ask you, what would you spend for someone like Jerome Ford? He is now the clear-cut number 1 back. Stefanski actually said Jerome Ford is our RB1. There's all the talk about going to get Kareem Hunt, but they already got rid of Kareem Hunt and kept Jerome Ford in a very run-heavy offense in Cleveland. How much do you spend for a guy like that in so early in the season?
I have such a hard time saying anything short of 100%. I mean, maybe.
Whoa.
Yeah, honestly no, because he might be a league winner. He's inheriting a lot of work. He's a great player. Talent plus opportunity equals fantasy success.
What if I told you, Kevin, that the Rams have fielded multiple calls for Cam Akers, and one of those teams was the Cleveland Browns?
I'm sorry, Cam Akers doesn't scare me.
Really? You don't think if Akers, who ended the season so strong and because of his attitude is now on his way out of LA, not because of a talent issue, if he lands in Cleveland, if Cleveland trades for him, how did that affect Jerome Ford?
I think it would be not great. So I mean, if I'm glad I'm hearing that because I haven't heard that, but I would still say north of 90 to 95%. Just based on the talent, the opportunity. I have heard actually that the Cam Akers trade is from what I understand, there's not like a big personal rift anymore. Like it seems like he's handling the benching well. He's handling the healthy scratch well.
Sean McVay said that it was like a violation of team rules and team culture, and that's what led to this whole thing in the first place.
I got to dive into the reasons behind Cam Akers getting traded because I've never been too impressed with him, to be completely honest with you. The health, the Achilles. And
we don't have to dive into it because Cam Akers is probably not on your waiver wire.
Yeah.
But it was just a question I posited specifically with regards to the 100%. I'm not sure I would spend a 100% on any player at this point.
What's your ceiling for Ford? Where would you go to if you you really needed him?
Team needs dependent, right? So if I have Saquon, if I had Chubb, if I've got multiple RB1s injured, then I would probably maybe 50%, throw half of my fob. But you can't.
You're not going to get him with 50%. I'll be completely honest with you.
Okay, then what happens when other guys get injured later in the year and you have no money left? The fact that this is week 2, going into week 3, that's the part that I have a problem with. If your playoffs are coming up, you spend every dollar you have left on a guy like Jerome Ford. Right now, though, that's my problem is you're completely hedging everything now with nothing left in the chamber for later in the season.
It's definitely a fair point, and it kind of has a lot to do with, I think it's philosophical, so I'm glad that we're so far off. But you almost have to say, is it even worth putting a bid in if you're going to do 50%? Because I bet everything that I own that he'll go for more than 50% in every league that you're in, that I'm in.
Then to me, with the way I approach my team build, then he's not on my team. I'm not going to spend all my FOB on a guy who will be making his first NFL start because of an injury. So let's keep on rolling. My running back, I dove a little bit deeper. I wanted to leave you room for it. I know that was the easy one. Let's be clear.
It's the layup.
I'm really big on Tajay Spears, especially in redraft. I didn't get him in any of my dynasty leagues because there was all that talk about he literally is missing an ACL, Kevin. He doesn't have an ACL on one of his knees. And the problem is that will eventually catch up with him. But we're talking about like 3 to 4 seasons from now. In the meantime, I thought maybe he would be just a clear-cut backup, get touches here and there. But he's actually getting usage. Yeah. So he is only averaging 9 less snaps per game than Derrick Henry. Actually outsnapped him in the first game. And when he does get in, he's very effective. He's averaging almost 7 yards a carry. Henry, by the way, only averaging 3.6, so a smaller sample size. Yeah. But Spears is twice as effective running the ball so far. The fact that he's an amazing handcuff, but is also getting usage, that's the kind of running back I want to get. And because he's a rookie, I think he's only going to get better. Get Tajay Spears. You don't have to spend a lot on him because I don't think people are quite throwing down the money yet, especially when Kyron Williams and Matt Breida, like all these running backs are going to get a lot of FOB. Like go get Tajay Spears for cheap.
What would be your ceiling for Tajay? Let's say he was a free agent and you had your full budget. What percent would you go?
Somewhere between 5 and 7%.
Okay, cool. I was thinking 10 and 15. So I think we're in a similar range here. But I like it because you're getting out ahead of it, right? If you had done this with say Jerome Ford last week, you wouldn't have to spend 50 to 100% of your FAB.
I am going to address it since this is a waiver wire question. Armand asked, should New Lions running back Bam Zonathan Knight be picked up? So he's on the practice squad. They just signed him to the active roster. Only if you have a really deep bench.
Deep dynasty, yeah.
Yeah, dynasty 100%. If he's on the bench in dynasty, get him. If it's a redraft, if you have a huge bench for whatever reason, go ahead. Montgomery's banged up. Gibbs, they might want to keep as more of a passing back. They're good. And I really liked Knight out of NC State, and I liked him with the Jets.
Yeah, he's good. Reynolds with the Jets too, or with the Lions too, is another name. I believe, is it Craig Reynolds?
Craig Reynolds, yeah. But these are the kind of backs I don't get excited about.
Right, I get that.
Like Zonathan Knight, he's still very young. Yeah, he was a rookie last year, so there's potential for him to still increase. Craig Reynolds, I like the guy. We've kind of see what we're getting there.
It's the same with Breida too. It's not ideal, especially against 49ers.
Right, that's what I mean. Like, don't spend all your money on Breida. Jerome Ford's still young. I get that. Breida, we know what Breida is. Mm-hmm. Kevin, let's keep it rolling. Let's go ahead and move on to wide receivers. Who were you looking at in the waiver wires for wide receiver in week 3?
Yeah, and I like the wide receivers this week. It's a pretty deep list, but the cream of the crop for me is wide receiver Jaden Reed for the Green Bay Packers. He has 13 targets through 2 games, and him and Jordan Love are both rookies. So the fact that they're establishing that chemistry is really
Love is
nice.
A first-time starter. He's not technically a rookie.
Oh, you're right. That's what I meant.
4 years.
Yeah. You got me. Picking up what I'm putting down. Not to mention, Brian, 2 touchdowns last week and utilized very effectively near the goal line. I think he's cementing himself as somebody who, even when Green Bay has a full arsenal, will still get looks. He's been getting those drawn up looks. I want to say he scored on like a shovel pass type situation. Yeah,
it was.
So that's a scripted touch, right? Like those are the kind of touches that are very valuable. So, and also I love his game. He's just a good player. So I really love Jaden Reed this week to pick up. And, I mean, I don't know if he has too much season long value with the injuries that are happening around, but we'll see. It's an interesting bet to make,
Yeah, and there's a lot of weapons. Christian Watson, I'm expecting back this week. Luke Musgrave, they still want to get involved. Romeo Dobbs still there. But I love Reed's talent. I really liked him coming out of Michigan State. And it's clear that the Packers believe in him as well. I'm going to stick with rookies and go with one of my favorite rookies outside of the obvious ones like Bijan, and that's Tank Dell. I have been all over Tank Dell. I got him in every single dynasty league that I could. And actually, I think I have him in all my dynasty leagues because I traded for him in the Legit Football Dynasty League. I didn't get him in the draft, so I traded for him. I just love what he brings. He was such an explosive playmaker. I don't care how small he is. At the University of Houston, he showed out in training camp. He balled out in the preseason. Oh, and by the way, he is now a clear-cut starter with that Texans team. A Texans team who's going to be trailing a lot this year, and all he did was lead the team in targets this week. Went off for 7 catches, 72 yards, and a touchdown. I think we have only seen the beginning of Take Dell. Highly recommend prioritizing him this week.
Yeah, absolutely. He's one that I would go. I would go with maybe a little more fab than I would on Reed. Like I would say again, I'm thinking 10 to 15. I'm an aggressive bidder. You know, if I want a guy, if I see a,
I'm with you on Dell, and here's why on that percentage, because it is within it's not unlikely for him to be wide receiver 1 for the Texans by the end of the season. It's not at all. Jaden Reed has to climb a lot of other people. Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson. There's a lot of, but Nico Collins had a great week. Don't get me wrong, but I'm still a believer in Dell's talent. I think it's not. He's already passed Noah Brown, who was on IR. I don't think it'll take much to pass Robert Woods at this stage in Robert Woods' career. So then it's only Nico Collins, even if he's a wide receiver 2, in a team that's going to be trailing all year long in that Texans team, and Stroud clearly likes him and has a chemistry. I think the sky's the limit for little old Tank Dell.
384 passing yards for CJ Stroud. A lot of pieces of pie.
And against the Colts, they didn't play the Chiefs or the Jets. It's the Colts. Yeah. So if they're having to do that against Indianapolis, they're going to be having to do that probably all year long. Lots of opportunities and talent. Yep. Dell's got both of them now. Go with Dell, and don't be afraid to put, like I said, 15%. I'm fine with that on a guy like Tank Dell.
Yeah, 100%.
Maybe more. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the tight end position. Kev, who are you looking at this week?
It's just such an ugly landscape right now, Brian. It's so gross. Like having to pick a name here made me nauseous. I'm going to go with an old favorite of mine and a guy who is always undervalued in fantasy, but for a good reason, due to lack of consistency and lack of volume. And that's the less sexy of the two Bills tight ends. I'm looking at Dawson Knox. He's a red zone threat consistently. He scored in 6 of his last 8 games. That's crazy, Brian. Like those are good touchdown numbers. And if you're in the waiver wire for a tight end in week 3, you're already sort of punting the position a little bit. So
might as well go for the touchdown upside.
A touchdown dart throw is never bad. Not to mention he's averaging 4.5 targets per game through 2 games. And Kincaid hasn't taken him off the field even a little bit. The Bills lead the NFL, or they're one of the leading teams in 12 personnel. They've even started running 13 personnel, Brian. Jeez. The percentage? Yeah.
I don't even know who their third tight end is.
It's Quentin Morris, undrafted player. He's all right. He's
well, even if they just stick to the 12 personnel and they have Knox and Kincaid on the field,
he's going to be one of the two, and he's going to get targets and he's going to score touchdowns. So it's like I said, I'm not excited about it. It's kind of like my Baker play. It's a little bit of a glory play, but you could do worse. $1 fab, Brian. The minimum you can do to get him. Yeah,
I don't think many people are bidding on Dawson Knox right now.
You'll be.
Dalton Kincaid is still in everyone's mind as far as Buffalo, so definitely. I like that. I'm also going to go to an old faithful. Like you said, that like so many years, the tight end position is just, like eat my vegetables.
Every year.
Yeah, I have to because I got to start a tight end, but I don't love it. How about Zach Ertz? He's actually second among all tight ends in receptions right now. He's averaging 9 targets per game. Josh Dobbs clearly likes him as the go-to target. And he's tight end 9 overall without any touchdowns. You're talking about touchdown upside. If a tight end can get in the top 10 without any touchdowns, once you start adding scores into that, you've got top 5 potential. I'm not saying he's going to finish as a top 5, but the fact that this guy is still sitting on waivers because it's the old name, because Trey McBride was the sexy pick, and Ertz was hurt last year. Go get Zach Ertz. Eat your vegetables. They're good for you, right?
Yeah. It's kind of crazy that he's back because he did have kind of a brutal injury last year, right? Did he tear his ACL?
I don't remember the exact injury, but
it wasn't. I think it was like not that early in the season. So to see him come back,
like halfway through,
to see him come back this early, be a contributor. Josh Dobbs, like you said, he's clearly leaning on him very heavily, averaging 9 targets a game. That's through 2 games. That's nuts. Like that's consistent. Like that's Zach Ertz. He's totally worth a flyer, and I think he's worth 3% of your fab budget, 3 to 5.
Yeah, especially if you're desperate for a tight end, you could do worse. Than Zach
Definitely.
All right, let's close it out with a recommended defensive special teams streamer for those of you who still play with DSTs. We thought we'd each of us go back and forth throwing in a recommendation based on matchup for the week, Kevin.
Yeah, and so the DST streamers are pretty fun this week. I liked your pick a lot, but I have two that I'm gonna say, but I'm gonna start with what I think could be obvious. Mike Vrabel has a great defensive scheme, and the Titans through 2 games, they held the Chargers to enough of a low enough total that they got to win. They held the Saints to 16 points, and now they're playing again that hot garbage guy that I talked about, Deshaun Watson and the Browns, who's turnover prone. I think the Titans are a great stream this week because they're not super heavily owned, and that's a good matchup. And I also like the Chiefs defense against the Bears because Justin Fields. I don't want to say he's hot garbage, but he might be hot garbage. It's starting to look worse and worse for Justin Fields.
Yeah, he doesn't even have the rushing upside that he had last year.
It hasn't seemed like it. So and the Chiefs, they're kind of a volatile defense, like they definitely are leaky when it comes to yards, especially through the air, and that's not where the Bears are great. But they will get their sacks, they will get their picks, they will get their scores. So in a game where the Chiefs should bounce back and like establish themselves as like the dominant team that we've known them to be, their defense should have a good output. I'm anticipating a good defensive performance from them this week.
So my defensive streamer, once again, these are streamers that are most likely not on rosters. So we're not saying, oh, these are the best defenses in the NFL. We're saying these are defenses that have good matchups on top of being a talented unit, and that is the New England Patriots. And I wouldn't be upset if you just stream whatever team is playing against Zach Wilson, as long as Zach Wilson is at quarterback. But not only that, you've got Bill Belichick. The Patriots are 0-2. I mean, what are the chances they start 0-3? Probably. Yeah,
against Zach Wilson.
Bill's going to find a way against Zach Wilson.
It's low.
I think this is going to be a slugfest. I think it's going to be a running game from both sides. So that always helps defensive streamers when the points scoring is low. Jets have an up and down offensive line, which is always good for DSTs in the sack department because sacks create stats. Sacks also create turnovers. So I really like this matchup. Go pick up New England if you do not have a good defense, and hopefully they serve you well this week.
Yeah, and the Patriots DST is just always just like they're all reliable. They're undervalued. They're always, because of Bill and because of their personnel. I mean, Judon's good for a big sack season. They're going to get a ton of turnovers. Like they did the creative field goal block the other day, right?
Yeah.
Oh man, that's exciting to see.
Apparently, they did it to Pat McAfee back in the day too. He was referencing that on his show.
I love that. So,
all right, Kevin. So we got. I'm just going to close it out here. We got just over 22 minutes in. Nice, short, and sweet. We will reserve a small amount of time for questions specific to waiver wire. Again, guys, if you're just tuning in, we are going to do a fantasy Q&A show tomorrow where we answer whatever fantasy questions you have. Trade questions, start-sit questions, position rankings. It doesn't matter. You ask, we will answer. But here on the Waiver Wire Show, we've given you each of our one from each position. So we've given you 10 waiver wire suggestions. If you guys have any questions for waiver wire, go ahead and put them in the chat now. Kevin, do you have any honorable mentions you want to throw out there while we wait for questions?
Yeah, we talked about, if we're talking going back to quarterbacks, I think there's a good chance CJ Stroud is on your free agency in redrafts. And I think CJ Stroud proved that he can ball. I think he's looking like one of the best of the rookie QBs. So I don't hate, a speculative ad on CJ Stroud. It's probably, this is another gross one. You're going to need some Tums, but like a player like Tony Jones for the Saints with Jamal Williams going down. He scored 2 touchdowns last night.
You get one more week with Alvin Kamara out. So you're going to get at least 1 week where Tony Jones is the starting running back plus some Taysom Hill thrown in.
Yeah, so that's an interesting, and then there you go. That's not a bad tight end, little gross name, because he's always, dude, the Taysom Hill experiment is crazy because he does make plays. It's crazy. But
problem is you can't predict those weeks will have 3 touchdowns, and it's just like you have to hope that you happen to have him in your lineup that week.
It's such a dart throw. He's as good a bet as any of the dart throw tight ends, but it's chaotic. But
all right, let's wrap up the show. It looks like we do not have any questions. We had some questions earlier in the chat. We are going to be doing this every Tuesday, 6:30 Pacific, 9:30 Eastern. Come for the live show. Get your waiver wire suggestions. We'll keep it short. We'll keep it sweet. We're under 30 minutes. And then on Wednesdays, 8 Pacific, 11 Eastern, every Wednesday we'll do a fantasy Q&A. AMA, ask us whatever you want. It'll be Kevin. It'll be myself. And hopefully we'll get our producer Anthony on Wednesdays as well. Thank you. Appreciate all of you sticking around for the Legit Football Pods. Introducing 2 new fantasy shows, Waiver Wire today, Fantasy Q&A tomorrow. Kevin, my partner in crime, thank you as always for joining me in this new fantasy endeavor from Legit Football. Don't forget to sign up for the Legit Football newsletter. We got a lot of cool stuff coming out, including maybe a Waiver Wire newsletter in the future. A little fun tease for you guys. Thank you. This has been Brian McFadden, Kevin Phillip Fox on behalf of Legit Football. This is the Waiver Wire Show. We'll see you next time.